It's the Battle of the Palmetto State in Clemson, South Carolina, as the Gamecocks travel to the upstate to take on their arch rival. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between South Carolina and Clemson. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. That's prizepicks.com, promo code SECU to get that $50 bonus today. One of the best rivalries in college football, and maybe one of the most underrated, South Carolina and Clemson get set to do battle in the Palmetto Bowl, the Battle of the Palmetto State, whatever you want to call it. Pure hatred between Gamecocks and Tigers. In this state, you're either orange and purple or garnet and black. And again, that battle will be renewed yet again this weekend. Again, we are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips, and helping me do so, my good friend Cole Thompson joins me once again. Cole, what's going on, my friend? Appreciate you taking the time and really excited to break down this matchup with you.
You all love me. You know you love me. You know that I have been the one that has been preaching for a while. South Carolina got screwed in the LSU game. South Carolina did not deserve to be taken out and not thrown to the wayside. But this is a big game because, Chris, it's not just South Carolina that has to show up and dominate to guarantee their spot in the conversation for a college football playoff berth. I won't say they're going to get in just yet, but we have seen chaos occur throughout this crazy sport over the last few weeks to where everything is on the table. But Clemson, with a win, has an opportunity to go to the ACC title game because of that one loss is out of conference. So there's a lot of things on the line for both of these squads. And I'll tell you what, we're getting a ranked matchup. We're getting a potential college football playoff top 15 ranked matchup. Go back to the start of the year and say, hey, Clemson and South Carolina could be fighting for a playoff berth going into the final week of the regular season. There may have been some internal belief, but now there is national belief. Carry that same aura and energy that you had back in August all the way into Death Valley on Saturday. And if you are a Tiger fan, just remember, Dabo did it his way. Dabo is 2 wins away from proving that he's right.
You know, Cole, to your point, some are calling this or arguing this is the biggest Palmetto Bowl in the series history, which, you know, I think it's up there. Realistically, you think about what's on the line, postseason implications. I still look back, obviously, at the 11, 12, 13 matchups between Steve Spurrier, Dabo Swinney. Those two teams were obviously always ranked in the top 15, top 10, what have you. Those were the Clemson ACC title teams, South Carolina winning 11 games with Connor Shaw, Jadeveon Clowney, etc. But I think certainly this is the biggest of these matchups since probably that 2013 matchup, which I believe is still the highest ranked matchup between the two. And Cole, we've talked about other rivalry games, obviously, this week here on Rivalry Week. The beautiful thing about this, it's similar to some of those others. It doesn't need postseason implications. It doesn't need any sort of trophies or rings. Again, living in the Palmetto State, Cole, the hatred between these two, and many will tell you, you can go 1-11. You beat your rival in that one. We'll look on the season in a positive light. That's how big this game is. So, again, a noon Eastern time kickoff there at Clemson, South Carolina Memorial Stadium on ESPN. Cole, South Carolina is a 2.5-point underdog in this game. The over-under is set at 59 points. Clemson leads the all-time series 73-43-4. And Cole, last year, Clemson won by a final score of 16-7. Was a really, really sloppy Palmetto Bowl. So, listen, fingers crossed, we just get a more entertaining game than that one was because Clemson didn't even score an offensive touchdown in that football game. And, of course, South Carolina sputtered in that one. So they will be looking for revenge. As we dive into this one, Cole, I know I just mentioned this is a game that doesn't need it, but we do have to talk about the postseason implications here. I mean, I think South Carolina, you know, a lot of folks for weeks and weeks, and the Gamecocks have the longest winning streak in the SEC right now, 5 straight wins. Cole, you beat Clemson on the road. You got a real argument. And with the chaos that's happening in college football, let's just assume we get more. I feel like that would be a safe bet, right? I mean, maybe Auburn beats Alabama. Maybe Vanderbilt beats Tennessee. Maybe some more dominoes fall. You know, you're playing to beat your rival. You're playing to beat Clemson if you're South Carolina. Enough said. But then you factor in as well postseason implications. it's going to make what's already a very, very, very intense rivalry, one that I think Cole's underrated on the national scale. It's going to take that thing and take it even to the next level.
I think it has to. I mean, it's more than just you beating your rival. It's you beating a team that many people still envision as the focal point of the ACC. You know, we're only a few years removed from Clemson being dominant as wide receiver. A can't miss, can go toe-to-toe with Nick Saban. And here comes South Carolina, where every single year, minus 2023, they have beaten the odds with Shane Beamer. He is the true embodiment of, I don't care what you say. I don't care how you phrase it. Watch me do it my way. And you can sit there and smile when you're proven wrong. Got over 6 wins. Got 6 wins his first year when he was with a backup Zeb Nolan as a starting quarterback. Gets 2 incredible victories over Tennessee and Clemson in 2022 to knock them both out of the college football playoff hunt. And then last year, imagine if you just had a stable offensive line, how different this team would be with a veteran quarterback in Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells being at full capacity alongside Xavier Legette. Maybe we are talking about this team as still a different, but it's no longer that. It's this year. And more importantly, it's how you look. The thing that we have seen over the last several weeks, the eye test is important. The eye test has to be important. Who's playing better in the SEC than South Carolina on any given Saturday? Is it Ole Miss? No, because they just went down to the swamp and got dog walked. Is it Alabama? Of course it's not. They couldn't score a touchdown against an Oklahoma Sooner defense, and it looked like that Jackson Arnold had turned into Jalen Milroe. Is it Tennessee? They're averaging 23.5 points per game in conference matchups. Every single way that you look at it, South Carolina has improved offensively. They have improved defensively. They're not shooting themselves in the foot. They're finding their identity at the right time. They're building momentum. And they're carrying themselves like they are a college football playoff contender. If you walk into the belly of the beast on Saturday and leave no doubt, there is no doubt that South Carolina belongs in the conversation for a 12-team college football playoff. You can go ahead and quote me there on that one.
So, Cole, as we take a look at the matchup, not to oversimplify this thing, but it really feels like it comes down to both of these lines of scrimmage, and I think which offensive line holds up better. Like when you look at the defenses, I love the under in this game, admittedly. I think this is going to be more of a defensive slugfest. I know South Carolina of late has come on strong offensively. What they've done with Rocket Sanders, LaNorris Sellers, there may not be a better, and I'll go ahead and say this too, there's not a more improved player from week 1 to week 14 than the progression of LaNorris Sellers. It's been a lot of fun to watch him come into his own. But Clemson's got a really stout defensive front. South Carolina's got a really stout defensive front. Cade Klubnik is able to get out of the pocket and use mobility as well. We saw it in the game against Pitt when he had the game-winning touchdown. So, I really think, Cole, whichever offensive line is able to – I don't think either offensive line is going to dominate, obviously. Clemson with their running game, Phil Maffa's a 1,000-yard back. But still, I think both defensive fronts are probably going to dictate the day. It's just which offensive line – can hold their own more often than not and give their offense a chance. Avoid getting behind the sticks and early downs and keep things manageable. I really think that's what a lot of this game is going to come down to.
South Carolina is the most improved offense from week 1 to week 13 in the SEC. But when you look from last year to this year, just from a broad perspective of college football, there is no more improved offense than Clemson. They found their rhythm in second-year offense coordinator Garrett Riley, and they're capitalizing in every single area. They rank 11th in total in scoring offense. They rank top 6 in total offense. They rank inside the top 20 in passing offense. They rank inside the top 25 in rushing. They're great on third down. This is a team that you have to become prepared for. And what's even more crazy is that you look at how this team is constructed. Everyone else is starting to buy into what is the NIL funds, what is the transfer portal. You got to go out and you got to bring in a 5-star former wide receiver to be the difference maker. You got to go get better on your defensive line by bringing in a former 4-star from an ACC school. No, they're still doing it their way, and it's working. Cade Klubnik has been one of the more improved quarterbacks this year, a 29-4 touchdown to interception ratio, a passer rating of 151.3. Phil Maffa has taken over for Will Shipley. You've watched as these young wide receivers have really stepped on up. And it's more than just, the consistency of the passing attack. It really has been the identity with Antonio Williams and with Bryant Wesco and with TJ Moore. They all have at least 3 touchdowns on the year, and they lead the team in first down conversions. South Carolina is going to have a field day at times with this Clemson front. What I will say is that South Carolina is built from what they've seen in the SEC to handle this ACC front.
And I think that's a really good point to your point, Cole, is that, the SEC ACC showdown. I mean, you don't want to make too much of it now because the way Clemson's recruited, they've got SEC caliber bodies. But I mean, South Carolina's gone up against the likes of a Texas A&M defensive front. They've gone up against an Alabama defensive front. They've faced off against, I know Ole Miss didn't go the way they had planned, but they've seen this type of talent. Even with what Clemson's going to trot out there, South Carolina has seen it. Again, that doesn't mean that the Gamecocks are going to win every single battle. And I mean, I think, again, that's probably going to be the one that defines it. I really feel like, Cole, from the South Carolina perspective, again, if you're Clemson, your key is keep LaNorris Sellers in the pocket. If you allow him to get outside the pocket, improvise, and it's much easier said than done. He's a load to bring down, and we've seen in the last few weeks, he's a magician back there in the pocket at times, the way he's able to escape. But I feel like if you're Clemson, if you can't keep LaNorris Sellers in the pocket, force him to beat you with his arm, I think it could be a long day for the South Carolina offense. Like if you're thinking about ways past the victory for both, I think that's what Clemson will have to do on the defensive side. Limit LaNorris Sellers by keeping him in the pocket.
Yeah, here's the big deal. They know how to be able to play in the front seven. They rank in the top 30 in sacks nationally, and they rank, if I'm not mistaken, number 18 in tackles for losses. So Peter Woods, Barrett Carter, the outside containment, they do a great job of being able to mitigate the type of plays that you will see from any quarterback. However, I don't know if they've seen a quarterback built like LaNorris Sellers, a 6'3", 220-pound Mack truck that is not afraid to tuck and run. He reminds me so much of Josh Allen with the big arm strength that had some accuracy issues when he was in college, but you just let him get into the open face. Dude, it is a gazelle running away from a bunch of lions, making sure that he's not going to get eaten. Instead, he is going to watch as the feisty tigers are sitting back and wondering, how the hell are we still starving? You're starving because if you got number 16 making plays left and right and just bulldozing past people saying, get out of my way, I'm going for 6. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup because when you look at Clemson this year, they've gone up against one quarterback that has very similar skill sets in terms of what is the brand of what LaNorris Sellers does really well. And that was in the Virginia Tech game where even though Kyron Jones had 115 yards, he still was able to run. They also had to go to Colin Schlee at one point. So, you aren't really seeing a dude that has been able to have this type of speed, connectivity, footwork, I think vision. I think the most underrated part about LaNorris Sellers is his vision in the open field. He sees creases and is not afraid to go ahead and cut well before anybody else, and he's breaking ankles in the process. It's going to be a really good testament, I think, for the front seven of what you've seen from Clemson this year. And they have done a good job of being able to mitigate plays from quarterbacks. With that being said, you got to realize that there is one LaNorris Sellers. There was a reason why many people out in Cola last year were talking so highly about him, thinking that this is going to be somebody that we can build our program around. This is a reason why we can actually compete for conference championships in the future. You're starting to envision what they had seen when he was coming out of high school back in 2022.
And again, speaking on Sellers, Cole, you get tired of hitting him. You've got Rocket Sanders meeting you in the hole as well. So, I mean, the running game, I think, is going to be key for the Gamecocks, just like it's been all year, because I don't think anybody believes they're built to drop back there and throw it 30 or 40 times, even with the progression and Nick Harbor and some others on the outside. Joshua Simon's a great weapon at the tight end spot. I think that's going to be a key matchup. Simon against those linebackers, those safeties, if you will, could be a mismatch. But without the improvising of what Sellers can do getting out of the pocket, he has made those receivers, those pass catchers, I think, better with his mobility. Now, Cole, Vegas has deemed this game as a coin flip. I would agree. Maybe you agree. We'll see what you think. But I would agree this game is a bit of a coin flip, obviously, at Memorial Stadium in Clemson. And when you've got a game that is a coin flip, kind of like it was back in 2022, special teams can play a major factor.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about South Carolina for very long without talking about Beamer ball. And it was a huge part of the recipe back in 2022 when South Carolina got that big win. It was Antonio Williams that fumbled the final punt that the Gamecocks recovered that essentially helped them seal the victory. I'll be really curious to see what South Carolina, if Shane Beamer's got anything, any tricks up his sleeve when it comes to the special teams department, because I'm trying to think back I don't know about 2021, but I'm pretty sure the last 2 years you've seen the Gamecocks pull out some sort of trickery in this game, whether it be a fake punt, fake field goal, something of the sort. So I think Beamer ball is going to play a factor in this game. How big of a factor, we'll see. Maybe you need it, maybe you don't. But I tend to think it's going to be a big part of this recipe if South Carolina is able to make it back-to-back wins up there at Memorial Stadium.
I think at the same time, you also have to be willing to give that trickery up if you're deep into your own territory to where it is close enough.
You got to be smart with it. You got to be smart with it for sure.
You got to be willing to be. You have to be willing, I think, to go for special teams.
Yeah, but I was going to add too, Cole, before you get going, is that special teams didn't just play a big part in 2022 from trickery. You might recall Kai Kroger had probably the best game I've ever seen a punter have, just pinning Clemson in their own territory. Oh, I'm talking about inside the 5-yard line. So in a game that we think, to that point, in a game that we think defense could rule the day, field position will be a big part of this game too.
I think the other thing is that you're going to have to trust your kicker at times, and that might be a big detriment. Alex Herrera, he's missed several kicks. He's got a 78% success, a 72.2% success rate. He's minus 0 for 1 on 50-plus yarders. His longest of the year is a 46-yarder. With that being said, Nolan Hauser is only 75%. He is 1 of 1 on 50-yard field goals, 0 of 2 on 49-yard attempts. So this may be one of those games where you got to trust your intuition. You got to trust that your offensive line is going to sell it properly. Maybe it's a Mazio Bennett. Maybe it's a Nick Harbor. But somebody that is lined up at the gunner and you have your punter throwing a pass that converts for a 4th down coverage just to get closer into range for you to be able to trust Herrera to make that type of kick. Just for you to be able to trust Hauser to make that type of kick. And then you talked about it. I think that field position, especially on punts, is going to really factor into this game because if you're able to land inside the 5, South Carolina is going to have to trust the rushing attack of Rocket Sanders and LaNorris Sellers to pile drive just to get out of the end zone. And if you are Clemson, you may have a defensive line, if they can win their one-on-one battles, that forces safeties, forces a quarterback playing in this rivalry to throw under pressure, leads to turnovers, you get exceptional field position. Field position is not just where it comes for the punter. Field position is our defense now has an opportunity to force them deep into their own territory where if we don't get a turnover, we're going to get exceptional field position on the opposing punt, or we're going to get exceptional field position because we get that takeaway, give our offense less time to work with.
And you mentioned, Cole, I don't know that either side really feels good about their kicker. That's for as great a season as South Carolina's had, that's what I feel like I see every week on the timeline is we don't have a kicker we can trust. You know what I mean? So, yeah, if it's and we've seen plenty of South Carolina Clemson matchups that have come down to those, those last few moments, and sometimes it takes a kicker, and I don't know if either side really wants to be in that position. Cole, zooming out a little bit, again, this game is big for Clemson, trying to get back to double-digit wins. I'm not exactly sure how many years in a row it would be, but it's a lot. They've had a lot of success, obviously, under Dabo and company, and they want to get back to double-digit wins, go into the ACC championship game with that momentum. You always want to win this game. Again, I don't have to oversell why it's important to win this one. But I do think, Cole, for the South Carolina perspective, listen, win or lose, you've had a great year, right? You really have. But and when I say this, hear me out. For the trajectory of the Beamer era at South Carolina. Not from his jobs under – no. Let's remove that. But, you have such an opportunity here. You've won 5 straight. You are I would say you're probably the best story in the SEC this year, really, truly. Just in year 4, I think for the future trajectory, Cole, winning the state matters. That's what I'm trying to get to. Winning the state matters. And if you're not going to get to a college football playoff, and you're not going to get to an SEC championship, and you're not going to win a national championship, the next best thing you can do is beat your rival, right? Yeah. And South Carolina hasn't done a whole lot of beating of said rival. Let's call it for what it is, outside of the 5-game winning streak when Steve Spurrier was back in Columbia. So I really think for the Shane Beamer era, it's just important, right? Because you sit right now, you're 1-2 against your rival. You've got the opportunity to pull back to even, have a chance next year to go up on your rival. And that's really, really important, Cole, when you're at a place, whether it's South Carolina, it's Clemson, it's whatever. I mean, we've seen it at places like Auburn and Alabama. Ohio State, Michigan. You'll get fired if you don't beat your rival. I just think for the importance of the Shane Beamer era to continue on the trajectory you want it to go, I think for South Carolina, it is important to establish, I'm not going to say dominance in the rivalry, because I think we'd have to see that happen first, because South Carolina just hasn't been to that place in so long. But at least get back to a place. This rivalry's been so streaky. The last thing you want is this feeling of, my goodness, even in a year we really had a great year, Clemson beats us back-to-back years, and they're going back, they're starting a new streak because the rivalry's been so streaky. So I say all that to say, Cole, winning this game, controlling the state, what it means for recruiting, what it means across the board, it's a massive opportunity for South Carolina.
You brought up a point that's really essential here, the recruiting aspect of things. If you see the turning of the tides to where now you have the quarterback in motion that you believe is going to be the foundation of your roster, you have some playmakers that can continue to grow and develop and transform into future maybe first-round picks or just NFL caliber players. You see this defense that is going to be missing some players next offseason because of what happens when it comes to graduation. And you see that I can be a factor on this team. There are going to be players that are sitting on the fence of, do I want to go to Clemson or do I want to go to South Carolina? And how this game portrays could be a reason why you finish with a top 15 recruiting class, or it could be a reason why you finish with the top 10 recruiting class. Transfer portal players in the ACC might say, I want to go test the SEC country. I think that I'm better suited being in this environment at Willie B than I am at Death Valley. I think the other thing that you also brought up is that if you don't get to beat your rival, it's one thing. If you get to knock them out of the college football playoff hunt altogether a second time, that's another. Clemson at 9-3 is not going to the playoff. South Carolina at 9-3 still can. There is a scenario to where, depending on how much chaos occurs over the next 2 weeks, if the committee does what I think the committee will do, look partially at resume, look partially at schedule, look partially at style of play and the eye test, then South Carolina may be considered the best of the 3-loss SEC teams. And I think that the other thing that if you do is if you go out there and you make a statement, Greg Sankey in years past has fought for the SEC to have representation, and not just representation in terms of let's go ahead and put in one team. Let's go get 2 teams in there. Let it be Alabama and Georgia. Let that SEC championship game mean nothing. We want them both in the playoff. And he'll do it for LSU. And I know he'll do it for Tennessee, and he'll do it for Texas. But South Carolina's been here for over 3 decades as part of the conference. If you leave no doubt on Saturday that you are playing like one of the 12 best teams in college football, I hate to break it to you, Sankey's got to go ahead and make sure that he does exactly what he has done in years past for LSU, for Alabama, for Georgia, for Texas A&M in 2020 when they were left out of the CFP in a COVID year. You got to do it for South Carolina. You got to make sure that when you go to the committee and say, you want us to stick around, you want us to be a part of your 12-team playoff, you're putting in the 12 best teams. And find a way that you can convince me that South Carolina isn't playing like one of the dozen best. Spoiler alert, they're not. But it's up to you to make sure that statement becomes a reality.
And to your point too, Cole, 2 different ways, 2 different methodologies of doing things. South Carolina, you think about all the transfer portal guys they brought in and that are making impacts. Clemson, not so much. It's a chance to reaffirm our way's the right way. Your way is misguided. So that would be another feather in the cap, if you will. Cole, let's lock in some predictions, some picks for this one. I'll let you go second in these picks, if you will. I'll go ahead and start. You know, this rivalry, Cole, I mean, I could go on and on and on about what it means. Obviously, I'm a resident of the Palmetto State. I've grown up in this rivalry, around this rivalry. I've got friends on both sides of this rivalry. I've got friends going to this game, actually, Cole, ironically enough. When you take a look at this game, again, I do think both defenses are going to kind of rule the day. I think South Carolina and both Clemson actually have really come on strong when it comes to their offense and the improvements they've made from week 1 to now. But this just feels like with both defensive lines, both front sevens, both really defenses as a whole, and I think the way they can attack each other's opposing offenses, I feel like this game is destined for a lower scoring game. I think it worked out well, Cole, for South Carolina that you got the noon kick there at Memorial Stadium. I know a lot of fans were upset, but I mean, listen, if you're going on the road in a rivalry game, you'd rather it be earlier than later. Trust me, you don't want to walk into that night game atmosphere. You know, this one, Cole, is so tough to pick because let's call it for what it is. Clemson's had the upper hand for most of the time. I mean, there have been some really, really heartbreaking results, some really agonizing games to watch from the South Carolina perspective. Even when you felt like you had the upper hand, it seems for whatever reason, Cole, you ask any Gamecock fan, they're going to tell you Clemson plays their best game of the season, it seems, in this football game. That being said, it's going to take Clemson's best game because I think South Carolina's front seven is coming. Like Kyle Kennard is coming. Dylan Stewart is coming. Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders, Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams. Then you got Nicky Manwari and DQ Smith and Jelon Kilgore in the back end. I know Cade Klubnik has been much improved this year. I like Garrett Riley, their offensive coordinator. I think Phil Maffa is a really solid back. Their receivers have been better than we expected. But I don't think Clemson, Cole, has seen a defense like this. I really, really don't. And guys, South Carolina has won 5 straight games. They're one of the hottest teams in college football. You give a team that has got a lot of talented players and you give them confidence, Cole, you mix those two things together, that's a recipe for some big-time success. I think you're going to see LaNorris Sellers continue to be able to improvise, get outside the pocket. I think that ability, and again, Clemson's defense, very, very good. It's going to be difficult at times. You're going to have to lean on Rocket Sanders in the running game to find some balance. But I do think at the end of the day, it's going to be LaNorris Sellers and his ability to get outside of the pocket and make plays. Cole, some guys are just gamers, man. And I think LaNorris Sellers is that guy. I think it's destined to be a classic. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. South Carolina is one of the hottest teams in college football with one of the best front sevens in the country. And I think that's what we're going to leave Saturday's game saying, because I think the Gamecocks are going to get the win over Clemson. I think it's close late. South Carolina punches one in via a Rocket Sanders rushing touchdown to pull away and win this football game by double digits. Give me South Carolina 24, Clemson 14. The South Carolina defense dominates once again, and the Gamecocks put one final stamp on their college football playoff resume and await the committee's decision.
So I have to apologize to Gamecock Country, because even though I was the only person on this platform giving the respect that has been due to South Carolina for a while, I went on a tirade and said there is no shot that a 9-3 team can get to the college football playoff this year. And I still think that there is a shot that there is no 9-3 team in the college football playoff this year. But it's not like it is impossible at this point. You have to consider eye test. You have to consider resume. You have to consider strength of schedule. You have to consider head-to-head matchups. You have to consider the strength of a team. And more importantly, you have to include how a team finishes the year. So many people look back at what a season began with, not how it closed out. Look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has the most egregious loss of any team in the college football playoff hunt. Yet there is no doubt that the way that they are playing at this point looks like a top 12 team. I think that both Clemson and South Carolina have a very good shot of making a case to go to the college football playoff, because the Clemson wins, they're in the ACC championship game. They are the established dominance in the conference. They can hold their own against SMU. The way that SMU plays football actually, I think, benefits a team like Clemson a lot more than it does Miami. So that may end up being a moot point to where now we have Clemson fighting their way back in despite losing to Louisville and losing to Georgia early on in the year. And you won't penalize Clemson for a god-awful performance against a team that now has shown its true colors. I don't think you should penalize a team like South Carolina for losing by 5 combined points to LSU and Alabama, including one of those games on the road, and a really underwhelming performance where they were down and out of the count against Ole Miss. But it is up to you. It is not up to the committee. It is not up to the fans. It is not up to to anybody else from other conferences to do the job for you. It is up to you to do the job on Saturday in Death Valley. It is up to you to show the world why you are one of the 12 best teams and why you have earned your right into the college football playoff. And Chris Phillips, Gamecock Nation, I am defending you as a 9-3 team to get into the college football playoffs, because you will be 9-3 come Saturday afternoon. You will show why you are one of the most complete rosters in college football. The grit, the determination, all of the outside noise that was pinned to you in the offseason. When you heard at SEC Media Day Shane Beamer say, go ahead and put us at 11 or 12 in the SEC polls. We don't care. You never did then. You don't care now. Rivalries are meant to bring the best version out of you. The best version of South Carolina will be taking the field on Saturday morning. LaNorris Sellers goes on off. Mazio Bennett shows why he is a future number 1 wide receiver. You get Josh Simon involved. You get Rocket Sanders to blast off into the second level of the defense, and it is off to the races. This front 7 feast. This secondary creates opportunities. I like Cade Klubnik. I like the direction that you have with a guy in Garrett Riley as your offense coordinator. I like Phil Maffa. ACC title could be on the line in 2024 out in Clemson, South Carolina. But the upstate is going down to the likes of the Gamecocks, who prove to the world this is why we belong. This is why we are a team that you do not want to face. This is why we are the ultimate test in the world of college football. Deny what the record says. Look at how we play. You know that we are one of the 12 best, and the last thing that you want to see coming down the track. Give me 38-14 final score, South Carolina, in a rivalry. Leave no doubt for Greg Sankey to go to bat like he has in the past.
Cole, final thing, my parting message before we leave. Get your Clem Sucks packs ready. If you know, you know. It need not much explanation, but Cole, with my past, my final message in parting is fuck Clemson. Genuinely, fuck Clemson. Anyways, what do you guys think? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this one playing out when South Carolina and Clemson do battle on Saturday at Memorial Stadium? Guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.